Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new here, I'm Allison and I have a small business called Plenty of Yellow. You can find me over on Instagram or on my website. This video is about OCD. There are so many misconceptions and it kind of drives me insane. Haha. No. I try not to say things like that, but it really is harmful to misuse I'm so OCD about this or whatever, or to say you have OCD and clearly you just like keeping things really neat, which is so not a thing for many people with OCD. There are plenty of people who have that, but there are many, many, many who do not. So before I decided to do this video, I was like, I'm gonna organize all these things. I'm gonna put it all together in this way. I reached out and have a questionnaire filled out from 5 different people with varying experiences with OCD. And I just feel like winging it as far as like I have some information printed out so I can go in more detail, but truly just letting you hear firsthand from me and my experiences and the experiences of other people, and just, you know, disclaimer, I am not a doctor. I have no medical degree. I have no medical license of any kind, and I'm only here talking about the experiences and information from the internet. So if you are having any questions, doubts, whatever, please speak to a doctor. I am not here to give medical advice. So let's talk about OCD. Signs and symptoms. So people almost always assume that you have your obsession and your compulsion, which is not true. You can definitely have one or the other, and they do not always come together. I mean, you can experience all three. But basically, they interfere with life. You can definitely try to, like I always try to kind of hide it in situations, like in working situations and things like that. And that was very difficult. But it's almost like when you're in your own space, you have this relief to be able to fulfill those things, so you're not like on edge from not being able to. So basically, obsessions are repeated thoughts, urges, or mental images that cause anxiety. So this information is from the National Institute of Mental Health. It says basically common symptoms of obsessions are fear of germs or contamination, unwanted, forbidden, or taboo thoughts involving sex, religion, or harm, aggressive thoughts towards others or self, and having things symmetrical or in a perfect order. So that is just one of these 4 things. So when I tell you that OCD is not talked about enough in what it is beyond keeping things neat, it's just no one really wants to, I think, be seen in the light that OCD is. I mean, I didn't realize I had OCD for such a long time, and I was like, these thoughts I'm having are wild. Like, I thought something was very wrong with me. I don't even remember how I found out. I definitely remember I was living in Florida, and I don't remember if I was just Googling. But I never, like, I didn't get an official diagnosis while I was first experiencing these things, or I guess recognizing. I think many people live with it for a very long time before putting a finger to it, a name to it, which can be really scary. So next you have compulsions. They are repetitive behaviors that a person with OCD feels the urge to do in response to an obsessive thought. So that could be excessive cleaning or hand washing. I like to wash my hands. They feel dirty even after putting lotion on. Like, I have to remind myself sometimes and be like, I'm putting this on my skin, like on my face. It's okay for it to be on my hands. It's not like a medicated something. Like, I have to kind of talk myself through it and be like, it's okay to not wash your hands right now. And that can sometimes be hard and not be, if I wasn't on medicine, I would not even be having that conversation with myself. Ordering and arranging things in a particular precise way, repeatedly checking on things, such as repeatedly checking if the door is locked or the oven is off, even if you can see that it's locked or that it's off. A lot of checking. Light switches. There used to be times where I would turn off a light switch but not like get that kind of click and feel the need to do it again to make sure it was like off. Touching the stove. Even if I haven't cooked in like 2 days, I'm touching that stove. I think the bridging of the gap between getting better and again being on medicine was trusting Sam enough to be like, hey, did you lock the door? Some nights that was fine. That was enough. And other times I do it myself. There are still days where I double check. I can see it, I still need to touch it. So not all rituals or habits are compulsions. Everyone double checks things sometimes. So, you know, it's definitely not OCD just because you do. But it says generally you can't control your thoughts or behaviors even when they are recognized as excessive. You know, there's so many things that I did to try and control my surroundings, and you could have sat there and told me all day, this is a lot. This isn't normal. I hate to use the word normal because normal is not a word in my vocabulary anymore. But this is excessive, I guess, like it says. And I'd be like, I don't care. I feel how I feel, and I feel it strongly, and I cannot get out of that. So usually you spend at least an hour a day on these thoughts or behaviors. You don't get pleasure when performing the behaviors or rituals, but you get a sense of relief, normally very brief, from the anxiety. And then you experience significant problems in your daily life due to these thoughts or behaviors. So I was always trying to control everything, and it could have been things my husband was eating. It had nothing to do with his weight. It had to do with like money, like excessive use of things. Like, it was bad, but again, validated 1,000%. And I'm not here to say that everyone who controls things in their life or their significant other is suffering from OCD. There are plenty of people who are controlling and manipulative. And I'm also not sitting here saying that I'm not at fault, because that was me. I did that. I did those things. But recognizing that these were things that had to do with OCD, and knowing that I wasn't a bad person. There were reasons why I was doing these things. And that's just a small portion of it, but it could be, as things come up, I will tell you more of things in my life, but it's very hard when you suffer from anxiety and depression. You're a highly sensitive person. You know, the anxiety is, it triggers the thing that then the OCD comes into play, and you just have this mess where you can't really pinpoint things anymore. You're like, what mental health issue is this? And it just kind of feels like your own personal hell. I have a large seltzer. Okay. Also, this video is going to be pretty long, so I'm going to cut it up into more tolerable parts. So some individuals with OCD have a tic disorder. I do not. I would say I don't know if that has correlation with Tourette's, but it says motor tics are sudden brief, repetitive movements, eye blinking, facial grimacing, shoulder shrugging, and head or shoulder jerking. You could be doing repetitive throat clearing, sniffing, or grunting. I do know that if I sniff, or used to, that I would do it more frequently and then kind of give myself a headache. Like if I could smell something and I would just, and it would be something I didn't like, but I would just keep doing it. So, you know, these things don't stay this way all the time. Like, you know, your symptoms can get worse, get better. It says people with OCD may try to help themselves by avoiding situations that trigger their obsessions, or may use alcohol or drugs to calm themselves. I definitely enjoyed drinking, not in any excess by any means, but like, as far as somebody with anxiety, using a drink at night to calm myself was definitely not the route to be going, because that is going to make me more anxious. But in my head, I was like, this is what will calm me down. I, for the longest time, struggled with FOMO and you know, kind of having boundaries for myself. So instead of sitting there and making decisions that were best for me, kind of avoiding triggering situations, I would put myself in these situations because I felt like I was missing out on stuff, and it was just bad. I was anxious all the time. And then I was kind of proud of myself because I was like, I'm doing these things I wouldn't normally do, but I was like on edge. It was not good. Around then is when I started taking medicine again. I took some stuff around my late teens, so maybe when I was 18 and went to college, I think. I definitely suffered from anxiety. From as long as I can remember, I've suffered from anxiety. But, so basically, you know, once you start caring enough about yourself, and it's not so much I avoid triggers, but if I know I am heightened on a day, maybe this is not the day I'm gonna go to the mall and, you know, try and pick up an order when it's busy and things are going on. If I'm like, can I handle Costco today? No. Like, these are things that I know are triggers that will then put me into a bad place. So I need to know what days I can handle these things and what days I can't. I'm not overall trying to avoid doing things in life, although there are many things that I probably avoid. I'm not missing out on anything. There's nothing that I would want to do that I'm not doing. But I know that's not the same for a lot of people. I would say my OCD is mild in comparison to people who maybe can't leave the house or, you know, I don't know. I hate to compare situations, but I also don't want people to think that I feel like I had it very bad. I know what I had, and in it was pretty bad for me. So everyone gets to experience their own thing, and what you have is important to you. So another weird thing that I didn't realize until kind of doing some research about OCD, that genetics can play a role. So it says twin and family studies have shown that people with first-degree relatives, such as a parent, sibling, or child, who have OCD are at higher risk. The risk is higher if the first-degree relative developed OCD as a child or teen. So they're still doing more research to kind of see how that comes into play. To my knowledge, no one in my immediate family has OCD or has told me. But anxiety does spread in my family. So then there's brain structure and functioning. So imaging studies have shown differences in the frontal cortex and subcortical structures of the brain in patients with OCD. So there appears to be a connection between the OCD symptoms and abnormalities in certain areas of the brain, but the connection's not clear. I would love to have more research, more knowledge on how the brain works, how the medicine that treats mental illnesses works, because there's not a ton of knowledge about the in-depth aspects of that and the long-term effects and things. And then you, of course, have environment. So an association between childhood trauma and OCD symptoms have been reported in some studies. Totally makes sense. Let's see. And then this says that there's apparently some cases where children develop OCD or OCD symptoms following streptococcal infection. It's kind of crazy. So, of course, you know, everyone has a different idea as to how to go about getting better. Not everyone believes in medicine. For the longest time, I was kind of against being medicated until I realized how much it was affecting not just me. The whole wanting to do this naturally, I tried some natural supplements, all kinds of different things, and at the end of the day, it was not fair to people around me that this affected. Just to think of the person that I was a year ago, or even the height of the pandemic, you know, one of my compulsions is picking at my scalp. And there was a really, really bad time in the middle of the pandemic where I was doing that. So, you know, right now I don't feel like OCD interferes with my life. It's still there, of course, But again, you know, this is where we get on topic of triggers. For me, that's when, you know, the OCD issues pop up when the stress is high, when the anxiety gets bad. So you throw any of those things happening in this past year onto the plate, and it's freaking recipe for disaster. And I'm sure many people experienced like heightened anxiety from this, and, you know, easily a trigger. So the process is so this information comes from NOCD or NoCD. The article is by Patrick Carey. So it talks about how the general basically series, I guess you could say, or steps is trigger, intrusive thought, catastrophic assessment, obsession, distress, compulsion. Again, this is not the same for everybody, but basically things happen to us throughout the day, and so triggers can be something that you notice or something you don't notice at all. Your mood could be a huge factor or not at all. Basically, it says a trigger is one of those things in our environment, sometimes in our own minds, that cause us to experience a certain thought or to feel a certain way. So it doesn't actually, it says the trigger doesn't actually cause like the feeling. There are other things contributing usually, sometimes. But there are other things that happen between the trigger and the feeling, and it's kind of like a pileup of things. So all of a sudden you're feeling like really overwhelmed, and you can't identify what is going on. You can't identify how you got there. Once I can pinpoint what is making me feel that way, if I can, I'm suddenly at ease. Like, okay, that's what's bothering me. But that's not always an easy thing to do. And this says, sometimes you might have a lot of unpleasant thoughts and feelings for seemingly no reason at all. You know, I think that it's just certain moments in my life I'm feeling slightly more stressed out. It could be the smallest, stupidest thing that I don't even recognize, and that's enough to be a trigger. So the biggest thing that people don't talk about, that many people with OCD deal with, is intrusive thoughts. And this is one that I have dealt with a lot. This is one of the ones that when I started realizing that it had to do with OCD, again, probably Googled, why am I losing my shit? And I don't want to say what I really think that I Googled yet, but basically that's, I think, how that came about. It's kind of amazing when you learn about something that you deal with, like a disease you have, an illness, anything that you then further understand the why, the how, and all of a sudden you're like, again, I don't want to say at ease, but to understand what you're dealing with, it is so much less unsettling. So I guess at ease, but like that just sounds too simple, because it's not. So intrusive thoughts. An intrusive thought is a thought, image, or urge that seems to pop in your mind out of nowhere. Sometimes these thoughts seem completely random, and other times they might be traced back to some type of trigger. So they can seem harmless, but sometimes they can be confusing, frightening, or even debilitating. So it says, here's the big secret about OCD. These thoughts that bother people so intensely, everyone has them. So apparently surveys of people without OCD reveal that they experience many of the same thoughts that completely derail people who have OCD. So it says it's hard to say whether or not people with OCD have these thoughts more often, but what we know is that people with OCD react to these very differently. So some of these thoughts, and I will tell you what some of mine are, but this list is, I think, a great list. And I'm sure many of you feel this way with certain things, but it's the intensity in which these happen. And for me, it's the repetitive nature. So it's not just thinking about it once, it's thinking about it over and over and over and over and over and over. So having no relief. All right, I'm about to jump in front of the train. I could grab that cop's gun and shoot myself. I could just kill myself. I should walk over and push that person. I should insult this person I don't know. I could cut myself with this kitchen knife. I should jump off this bridge right now. I could push my friend off this bridge right now. I could kill my child right now. I'm going to punch my brother right now. I want to see my sister naked. I want to kiss my uncle. I could steal from this store right now. I could grab the money from that tip jar. I probably got HIV when I got a blood test. I've messed up everything in life. The person I'm dating isn't for me. There's someone better for me. I'll just tear my clothes off right now. I'm more attracted to that person than to my partner. Life has no meaning. My niece is attractive. That child is attractive. I could be gay. I could be straight. I'm living a sinful life. I'm not a good person. Breathing is strange. I should stop breathing. I remember, I kind of laugh because I remember as a child laying in my bed and being so anxious and focused on my breathing. And I was like, if I don't focus on this anymore, I'm gonna stop breathing. And I thought about that over and over and over until I was so tired and would fall asleep. And it happened a lot. I could hear like swooshing in my ears, and that was from having tubes and having probably wax in my eardrum, and thought I was gonna die again, and just thought these things over and over and over again until daytime came, and there was almost a relief with daytime. It was less scary than being alone at night. But I definitely did still suffer from things during the day. Blinking is weird. I don't like that people blink. Images of the above, you see it happening. My family will be murdered. I could suddenly vomit in class. I should drive off the road right now. I could run that person over right now. Why not crash into that barrier? I should just scream right now. I'm going to tell my boss he's an idiot right now. I might dump this coffee on my boss's head. So, I have dealt with many intrusive thoughts. You know, the idea of how easily it would be to stick your hand into the garbage disposal while I'm running it. But instead of it being one time, I'm repeating this thought to myself. I could stab my husband with this knife. It's the ease at which these things can happen in life, despite the fact that you don't want them to happen at all. I could drop a baby on the ground. That one happened a lot. I never held babies. I've held my nieces. I don't hold any other children. Those thoughts never crossed my mind while actually holding a baby. I think I would have been way too scared to then actually hold them. But again, holding a knife never made me think I was actually going to stab my husband. I don't want to. I would never. So again, these things are awful. You know, it's so easy for these thoughts to just exist and to happen. And another thing that I will deal with is then playing out an entire scenario in my head. You know, I stabbed my husband, I'm widowed, I'm living this different life in which I'm sad and alone with 6 pets. I don't have words for how these things happen in my head, but for the longest time they really hurt me, because I'm like, how could I feel this way? I love my husband. I would never want to hurt somebody else. I would never want to hurt myself. So that can be very complicated. And that in itself is an emotional trigger. And then you kind of do this whole thing over again, you know? It's a huge cycle, and sucks a lot. I'm very grateful to be on medicine, because right now I'm kind of feeling a little like I'm reliving it, and it, you know, it's definitely getting me worked up, but I think it's good to talk about, so I'm not upset that I'm doing this video. But on that note, I'm going to stop this and do the next part, because I do not want these to be way too long and for me not to be able to hold your attention. So if you are still interested in learning more about OCD, please stick around, watch the next video. All right, thank you.